or maybe I went to the news to try to find hope for the future. And I just got more anxiety because they fed me all the terrible things that are happening right now. Like, yeah. So actually, we think it's going to bring relief. It just adds to the pile, which is really hard because scrolling is fun. And there's the dopamine and serotonin, like all those hits. There's pretty things on Pinterest and it can feel good for a time. But man, it doesn't satisfy in the long haul.
Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Hey friend, what are you consuming? What are you filling up on? Is it adding to your anxiety? We are beginning a brand new series on overcoming anxiety today. Most of us experience some sort of anxiety, everything from occasional or situational feelings of worry or fear, all the way to anxiety disorders where there is a frequent and intense or even excess worry and fear. For the most part in this series, we're going to be talking about the common everyday anxieties that we all experience, not anxiety disorders. But later in the series, we will hear from a licensed professional counselor on the different types of anxiety and when it's time to see a mental health professional. So how do we become grounded in peace? We let God intervene. Today, Amy Seiffert joins me for a conversation about nourishing ourselves with the things our souls need to be fulfilled. You'll hear us talk about the spiritual junk food we're consuming, Amy's story of overwhelm, and her new book, Starved, and techniques to ground us in peace. Amy is also the author of Grace Looks Amazing on You and is on the teaching team at Brookside Church. She is an affiliate Cru staff member and a regular YouVersion Bible teacher. Amy is married to her college sweetheart, Rob, and they live in Bowling Green, Ohio, with their 3 kids. Everything we talk about can be found on girlstalkinglife.com. Here is my conversation with Amy. Hey there, Amy. Thank you so much for coming on Girls Talking Life.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
So I know that you're a wife and a mama and a fellow Ohioan, which I love, and an author and a Bible teacher. What else do we need to know about you?
Oh my gosh. You need to know that I love Moose Tracks ice cream, like just bottom line.
Right out there.
Yeah, anything that's got chocolate peanut butter like loaded in it. You probably also need to know I love tennis. I'm a tennis player and my son just got involved as well. So it feels like let's get the whole family. Let's go.
How fun.
Yes. Yeah. A little bit about me.
Well, we are here. We're going to talk about your book, Starved, Why We Need a Spiritual Diet Change to Move Us from Tired and Anxious and Overwhelmed to Fulfilled, Whole, and Free. And Amy, when I talk to authors, a lot of times they write a book because that's what they needed. That is something they've struggled with or are currently in the throes of. Is that true for you?
Oh my gosh. Yes. And it was also part of watching my son was diagnosed with Crohn's disease about 4 years ago. And we were watching him. He was eating, but he was starving. And I was like, I feel like this is my spiritual life. Like I am taking things in all around me and I'm still starving. Like something needs to change. Like I need to shift some practices and some different ways that I see the world or different things that I do with my time. So yeah, there was just a lot of parallels when we switched his diet and then the spiritual diet that I needed as we were in the throes of switching his diet to find nourishment and peace, because there was a lot of anxiety and chaos going on. Yeah.
Would you say even outside of your home, you could see some of this? What did the greater world look like to you?
Yes. I mean, so even for me and many people, I would say I was watching just the anxiety levels rise over the last 2 years, a lot of division and disunity going on. Yeah, along with, I think exhaustion, feeling tired, overworked, fear of the future, just a lot of, yeah, the need for regulating our emotional health, right? And our spiritual health. And yeah, so when I was watching this, I was like, man, it was crazy to see when we shifted the diet for my son, 3 days in, he was pain free. And I was like, okay, that was dramatic and amazing. But I'm like, what would it look like for us to make some shifts, to put down our phone when we want to reach for it because we're reaching for validation or we're reaching for advice
Mm-hmm.
or hope from the news? And, what is this like to put our phone down and to replace it with silence just for 5 minutes at a time and allow ourselves to just be loved, be quiet, be nourished? So just thinking through what would it look like for the world around us to just make some simple meal replacements. Like we're eating this, let's try something different. We're consuming this, let's try something different.
That's so, so good. We are in a series on defeating anxiety, and you have a whole chapter in your book devoted to this subject. And at the beginning of it, you list kind of your swirling thoughts, my son's health, the laundry, we're not going to have clean underwear. What are we going to have for dinner if I don't get the groceries? And Amy, I could do the same thing right now, just listing all the things swirling in my head. So is this a North American thing? Is this a woman thing? Is this a human thing? Why are we experiencing that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think a few things. I think we have a lot piled on our shoulders as women. You add motherhood and maybe kids to it, and now you've got schedules and chaos. I think there's a weight to do everything well, and not have the grace to say, well, I'm going to do this about 70% and that'll be enough. And then I can do this other thing at 100%. I think so. Not even the permission to scale back in some places. I think there's internal pressure and external pressure in our world that can just make it chaotic and anxiety inducing in our brain. I think for moms too, specifically, if there's one child that is struggling, one of my friends was like, as a mom, right or wrong, you might only be doing as well as your struggling child, like your child who's struggling the most, because that's where you're going to then pour your energy, right? So, I mean, I think there's a variety of reasons, but I also think the noise and distraction in our world with social media and news, phones, that doesn't actually relieve the anxiety and the peace. I think it adds to it.
You think that you're being taken away from your anxiety when you're watching or scrolling.
Yes.
But the truth is, it's just kind of masking it.
Yeah. Yes.
Or feeding it in some cases.
Yes. Or even like exacerbate. Like now in my news feed, I went to the news to try to find hope for the future. And I just got more anxiety because they fed me all the terrible things that are happening right now. Yeah. So actually we think it's going to bring relief. It just adds to the pile, which is really hard because scrolling is fun. And there's the dopamine and serotonin, like all those hits. There's pretty things on Pinterest, and it can feel good for a time. But man, it doesn't satisfy in the long haul, and to quiet everything down. Yeah. So that moment in my kitchen in the morning when it was chaotic, I'm tripping over stuff. There's book bags, there's kids. I'm thinking about all the things. I just felt so overwhelmed. And even that idea of being overwhelmed is as if you're being buried, like a wave is coming and like burying you. I felt buried by the day. Too much.
I can very much relate to that. And then you go on to tell a story about getting a gift that was something that you needed and showing you that God saw you in that really small thing. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. So I finally get book bags, lunches packed, whatever, and they're already late for the bus. And so I'm like, you guys gotta go. So I'm opening the door, I'm blowing kisses, love you. And they each one of them, I have three kids, hop over this box on the front porch as if it's fine, nothing. Kids are like, ooh, a hurdle, whatever. It's not normally on our porch. They hop over this box. And then I look at him like, I almost trip over it as I'm like, what is this? And it's a sizable box. And so I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I think I did trip over it. And as I stepped, I was like, and when you hit something, you hit a bump or you hit into something that just kind of jars you out of what you were thinking. Like it just stopped me in my tracks. I ended up picking it up and it was way heavier than I pictured. And I hoisted it onto my dining room table. I thought, what is this? And so it was a great divine interruption. This box on my front porch that I wasn't ready for. And as I open it, there are 12 beautiful amber colored honey jars, local honey, just gifted to us with a little note. I think it was like, may blessings of honey flow. And I just got teary because my oldest son's diet, you can only have honey as the sweetener. It's the only sweetener. And we go through honey so quickly. And local honey is like a gem, right?
Yes.
All that goodness. So I'm looking at this jar and I'm like, oh my gosh. And it just, I could feel my whole body being grounded in that moment because my senses were interrupted. Even opening that jar, I'm smelling it, tasted it. I'm engaging all my senses, which is a grounding technique. When your anxiety is high and you're dysregulated, how do I come back down? Well, you can use your senses to do that. And I felt in that moment, I felt so seen by God. I was like, if he sees us, if he sees me with the honey like that we go through, like water in our house, he is going to provide everything else. He's going to help me with dinner tonight. He will shepherd me as to what to do with my daughter's school things going on. It just kind of reminded me of who God was because I felt so specifically seen in that moment. And I felt my whole body engage in peaceful grounding.
You go on to talk about a couple different types of grounding. There is body and mind and soul. Would you describe those just quickly for me?
Yeah. So the body grounding is something you could do anywhere, which I love. You can use your feet. Like right now, as I'm talking to you, I can feel my feet on the floor. And that just kind of, if your brain is going offline, when you use your body, it connects everything back together for your mind to go back online, to be able to think again. Because sometimes we're so anxious, we're not thinking well, right? And you can use your body to wiggle your toes, feel the earth, feel what is concrete around you. And then start to really look to see, are there 5 things I can see or 4 things I can touch, 3 things I could smell, and just kind of use your senses to really bring the anxiety down and really move it through your body, like from the top of your head, where you feel like smoke's coming out of your ears, literally top of your head all the way down, grounded to your feet. So something that my therapist talks about, and just really working with your body. So that's body. Mind, for sure, scripture, like memorizing verses, being in his truth, that is huge for anxiety because I can go back when my feelings want to be the engine of my train and drive it. I can go back to truth and let truth drive my train and let the feelings be the caboose. And then my soul, I think the grounding is really thinking through if the worst case scenario were to happen in my anxiety, like what if this happens? To remember Jesus did go through the worst case scenario and he did experience anxiety in the garden and he did go through terrible suffering and God brought a resurrection. And so thinking, even if I walk through this terrible thing that I'm afraid of, we have a God who is a God of resurrections. And so those are sort of 3 markings to take us to peace.
I think those are amazing techniques. And I especially love the last one. Going to that worst case scenario. What is it that you're worried about? What is spiraling in your mind? And saying, what if?
What if?
What will you do? How will you carry on if that were to happen? And with our Savior, we know that we can do that.
Yeah, which was really, it was a radical concept to me because I thought we shouldn't go to the worst case scenario. You're like, keep it positive. But it helps to go all the way to the bottom and to know, like, if I call it sink the ship. If you sink the ship and you go to the worst case scenario, God is the bottom. Like he really is. And he will hold us. He will lead us. And we know in the very, very, very end, he's bringing heaven to earth and pain is gone. Suffering is gone. Death is gone. Mourning is gone. Like the bottom is good and God is there. Yeah.
Talk to me about other spiritual junk food that we are feasting on.
Yeah. For me, a big feast that I engage in is my shame stories. It's just narratives in my life that pop back up like, you're going to fail at this. You aren't qualified to do this. Who are you to do this because of a past narrative or something said to me? And I can really ruminate on those stories and having to say, you know what? I need to replace that story with a good story. And I cannot get out of Luke 15, verse 20. And it's the story of Jesus was a master storyteller. He was always telling stories, asking questions, telling stories. And so he told the story of the two sons and the prodigal, the one that spends everything, runs away. And when he comes back, before he even gets a word out of his mouth to even say, I'm sorry, I spent all of your money, Dad. Before any of it, his father sees him. And there's these 5 verbs that they're a new story for me that I picture I try to do each morning before I get about it. The father sees him. He's filled with compassion for him. He's running toward him. He's embracing him and he's kissing him.
Mm.
And that's a good story. Like if I wake up and I just think of those 5 verbs and I use my holy imagination and picture God embracing me, that really quiets the negative narratives that really want to define my day. If I can think of my good father and how he sees me.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that spin on that passage or that focus on that part of the passage.
Yeah.
That's great, Amy. I am taking a quick pause to let you know about the show sponsor. Every day, we are inundated with words and messages that cut us down, filling our hearts and minds with lies that only bring doubt, anxiety, and heartache. But the scriptures are full of God's truth and his promises to us, so there is no better way to encourage our hearts than to focus on his word. Hide and Seek Scriptures takes it a step further by personalizing these truths and putting your name in the verse, making it that much harder to ignore. The verses are a paraphrased version with your name inserted, providing words of encouragement and truth for your heart to easily grab onto and hold tightly each and every day. I have the Rest in His Grace set. I keep them on my dresser and I read my verse for the week almost every day while I'm getting ready in the morning. It's powerful to have your name included, and it is a lovely way to help write God's word on your heart. Hide and Seek Scriptures is giving Girls Talking Life listeners, that's you, 15% off their first order with the promo code GTL15. Go to hideandseekscriptures.com and use code GTL15 for your first order. You can also find the link and the code in the show notes. Now back to my conversation. Girls Talking Life is all about being in community with other women, time with friends. How can that friendship help our spiritual well-being?
Oh, man, friends are so helpful. I think a good friend where you can be yourself and be honest and really share the hard, real, vulnerable parts, and you're still loved, that is really nourishing. That brings wholeness. Where we feel disintegrated, we can feel integrated. So I'm a huge fan of friendship, a huge fan of community, where we come and offer our gifts to each other. And it's my favorite that Hebrews describes community as coming together to encourage one another. Like, don't stop meeting, but come together and encourage, like infuse courage in one another to keep doing this really hard life, this anxiety inducing life. Bring courage to one another in community.
Absolutely. And I feel like the more we share and the more that we are open with our friends, then that anxiety level, again, will just, maybe it doesn't go away completely, but it will definitely lessen.
Absolutely. That connection, right? When we connect, I love that Brene Brown says connection happens through the cracks. Like when we are real about our cracks and brokenness and someone else meets us with their like me too, then you feel less alone. And that anxiety does go down, like, okay, I'm not the only one suffering like this. There's a common humanity that I can embrace in the middle of this like anxious situation. Yeah, I'm with you.
Amy, do you have any other thoughts on what we should be taking in, what we really need to fully nourish our bodies?
Yeah, I do. I have so many, but the one that is like, has been so good for me lately, and it's actually the hardest, even though I see the fruit of it all the time, is in the middle of the day to plan 5 minutes of silence wherever I can. So even after this podcast, I have a little break to just put the phone down, put anything that beeps, blinks, noise, just put it down, get by a window if I can, and just be still and silent, which does a few things for me. It helps me heal that hurry. I got to get to the next thing, and to know like, I'm okay if I sit here. In fact, God is running the world. Like, I can sit here and I'll be okay. And like, there's a couple other things that silence does. Just even to normalize, the first time I practiced 5 minutes of silence, the first 4 minutes, I had a grocery list. I had, like I had so many thought monkeys like swinging around my brain, right? I just felt like I cannot settle into silence. What is happening? But that last minute, and I did feel a peace that I hadn't known in a long time, just a rest. And then my alarm went off because I had set a timer for 5 minutes. But because I had tasted finally getting to that moment of like, okay, it was so good. It was almost just like an anchor in the moment in a day of a lot of waves. I don't do this every day. I try to really practice it, but I notice how good it is for my soul if I can replace the noise with silence. I'm not talking like some kind of 3-day retreat and find some monks, like anyone could do 5 minutes a day and see what you find.
5 minutes. I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I am going to switch gears a tad and ask you for your favorite 5. This is something I ask all my guests, and I would love to know what you are watching or wearing or doing right now that are your favorite things.
Oh, I love this question. I think it's really fun. Okay, my dry shampoo is one of my favorite things. Collab dry shampoo. I think it's amazing. I know your listeners can't see us right now, but I have it with me. I brought visual aids. I love it. Collab. You can find it at Kroger.
Nice.
I also love, there's something called True Earth laundry detergent, which is just, they're strips that dissolve.
Oh.
Right? I know. That right into your laundry.
No messy powder? No liquid?
Yeah. And I love it because you get 32 strips in one little package that's real thin and it's eco-friendly. It's called True Earth. I'm a huge fan. I'm like, I'll peddle that all day long. Okay, my third one is, I asked for one thing for Christmas and I got it, were these cute Madewell tennis shoes they have leopard print on them.
Oh,
I know they're white, but then they have this like black and white, which I'm not a leopard print girl, but I just became one because I'm like, oh, it feels like a neutral to me. Like what's going on with these.
Right. It is.
Right. I know. I'm like, can I get sponsored for Madewell? Who knows?
I didn't even know Madewell made shoes. So there you go.
Yes. Check out their shoes. They have cute shoes. So there's that one. And then I am loving, like, there's this, oh, what's it called? It's like tinted moisturizer by Lancome. It's called Skin Feels Good, and I wear it every day. It's just enough to like cover. That's my fourth. What's my fifth? Oh, my AirPods. So I'm being really vulnerable and honest. My husband got me AirPods last Christmas, and I lost them this fall. I know. I have ADHD, and I don't know what happened to them, but I misplaced them. But I kept them for almost a year. I felt good about that. And so my husband graciously was like, "Babe, you loved these. They were a game changer." And he surprised me and got them again. So I'm determined to hold on to them. But I love having them in my pocket, and they connect. And I love them. And I love listening to podcasts. So popping them in really quick and doing laundry is my jam.
Ah, fantastic. Those are a great 5. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Amy, I love what you're all about. I love what you're saying in your book, your message. And I do want to feel whole and free and all of those things. And I think that you have some really good, doable, practical things that we can try. We can implement, just a few into our lives to ease that anxiety. So thank you for coming on. I so appreciate your words.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for having me. We are not alone in our anxiety, and just those small steps per day could be big game changers for us.
Thanks for listening. It was so great to talk with Amy. I have tried the 5 minutes of quiet, and it happened much like Amy said. The first few minutes, my brain was running through my to-do list, but eventually I noticed the breeze coming in from the open window. I heard the birds and the neighborhood kids playing outside. I felt the plush carpet under my feet, and I was able to ground myself, and it was so peaceful. Amy's new book, Starved: Why We Need a Spiritual Diet Change to Move Us from Tired, Anxious, and Overwhelmed to Fulfilled, Whole, and Free, releases on March 21st, but you can pre-order it right now. At the end of each chapter, she has a prayer and a practice. And in the practice, she says, the daily reading of God's Word helps us hold on to the peace when anxiety threatens to starve us. So consider how you can make that a daily practice in your life this week. What would it look like to start your day with the peace and presence of God? I will see you back here in 2 weeks as we continue this series talking about overcoming anxiety with creativity. Until then, friend, don't let the conversation stop when the show is over. Share your story and start your own conversations with the girls in your life. Thanks for tuning in.